Without further ado, the RippleFX team presents Events Aren't Dead and Other Musings from Our Virtual Life. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rachel Horning. I am part of the founding team of RippleFX. We are going to tell you a little bit more about who we are in just a couple of minutes. As far as today's key discussion points, we are going to dive into the opportunity that this moment poses for event creators like yourselves. It ranges from geographic opportunities, cost, and building community. There's so many different ways that people are creatively cultivating deeper ties between people and communities, and even creating entirely new communities during this moment. Starting with some words of inspiration, necessity is the mother of invention. This has been a grounding quote for our team. The rug was pulled out from underneath all of us when COVID really forced a halt to physical connection and physical connectivity between people. We look at that as the ultimate invitation to socially connect. And what better way to do that than through virtual events? So that's what we're here to talk to you about today. And thank you for joining us. So starting with the mission of RippleFX. We are pushing boundaries of human connection. So whether there's new ways of approaching virtual events or perhaps outside of the box sort of creative ideas that you're looking for today, I think, at least I hope, that after today's webinar, you'll feel that much more equipped to push the boundaries of human connection, whether it's with your family, with your friends, colleagues, you name it. There's virtual events for every kind of group, and that's what we're here to talk about. How do we do that? How are we pushing the boundaries of human connection? We're doing that through high quality work, informed expertise, reliability, and mindful communication. I have never worked with a team of people who exercise more mindful communication than this amazing team here today. So starting with Martin, we've got Cheryl, we've got myself, Kevin, and Zach. You haven't seen their faces yet, but I promise that you will. They're all going to be sharing out some of the expert tips today. And then again, they're going to be available to all of you during the Q&A at the end. Going into section 1, this is all about reframing the opportunity. Let's think about geography through a dual lens here. So there was pre-COVID event life, and then sort of the present moment where we're forced into physical distancing, and we're going to do sort of a cross comparison here, so bear with me. So in the past, events were limited by location. So maybe you were in Los Angeles, but maybe the event was going to be somewhere in West LA. Let's say you lived in downtown LA, and you just didn't want to battle the traffic, go the distance, whatever the case may be. There was an actual limitation posed just simply by your geography. If you look at today, there can be a deeper focus on topic because location has become essentially irrelevant. So just from a content perspective, that's exciting. In terms of pre-COVID, when we were doing almost exclusively in-person events, whether you were an attendee or an actual event organizer yourself, you were strapped with expensive travel and accommodation costs that today you really don't need to worry about because at-home audiences don't travel. Now, of course, that's not to say that this is a permanent state, but it is a really big opportunity to perhaps transition those costs that would have been spent on travel into maybe bringing in really impressive speakers and actually being able to pay them for their time. And then third here, traffic concerns. I know I just mentioned Los Angeles, but by no means is Los Angeles the only city with a lot of congestion. Traffic concerns in the past would really complicate start times and end times for events because people were trying to navigate, rush hour traffic, and today you don't really need to worry about that. It's sort of a whole new frontier. So start and stop times are a lot more flexible. And then, the best cities for doing events are generally the most expensive. Maybe they are centrally located in the United States, therefore are prime for really like large scale conferences. And what that means for today is that there's actually more of a level playing field for event organizers specifically, who are no longer bound by expensive price tags to operate their event in some of those best cities. So that's a plus. Now we're going to reframe the opportunity around costs more generally. So we were looking at 30 to 50% of event budgets going toward venues alone in the past when events were taking place in person. Now, obviously, as long as the folks that you're working with have an enterprise Zoom account, you're looking at anywhere from a few $1,000s in savings to even hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings, because you're not having to rent out the massive hotel ballroom, so on and so forth. So there is some cost savings there for event organizers. And as far as decor, food and beverage planning, you know, that took a lot of time as an event planner. And B, now because we're not spending as much mental bandwidth thinking about the decor, the food and beverage, we're actually able to think a little bit more about the content, about really like pushing boundaries in whatever sort of industry you're looking to explore more deeply. In addition, to really match that exploration, you can focus more on digital design, replacing those physical event blueprints. So that's a plus. Staffing needs would obviously cost a lot of money in the past, as you were paying bartenders, all kinds of different service providers. And now staffing is a lot more streamlined because a single virtual event team is able to replace a massive staff, upwards of hundreds of people that are no longer needed in the virtual event landscape. And I do have sort of a caveat at the end of this slide that I don't want people to think I'm sort of glossing over. So just putting that out there so I don't forget. And then as far as accessibility goes, our team is working really hard actually to learn what the best industry standards look like for making sure that virtual events are as accessible to various audiences as possible, whether you've got folks that are blind or deaf or have different mobility issues. It's a lot harder to accommodate a wide range of people when you're doing an in-person event than it is versus in a virtual event. And so just from an accessibility standpoint, we're already seeing a lot of silver linings as far as virtual event production goes for accessible audiences. And the one thing that I do want to mention, just because it's personal, but also because it's a fact, obviously venues are really suffering, and a lot of staff, you know, bartenders and different service providers are really suffering right now because of the fact that we've had to transition to a more virtual format. So I don't want you to think that, you know, this is all rainbows and butterflies. It's not. This is just sort of stating the facts. And whatever you can be doing as individuals to lift up the people that are probably in need of jobs, the better. So, you know, I think our goal would certainly be to be able to hire more folks from the event world to come join us. But I did just want to throw that out there, that I realize this is not, it's not all roses. So moving over to reframing the opportunity around community. So I've personally experienced some interesting family-related milestones during this moment, and really have been excited at the prospect of inviting family members to join in either celebrating or mourning losses, who would not have necessarily been able to be so connected in the past. But now that we've actually shifted to a more virtual format, it has become the norm to invite family from near and far to come together, whether it's actually, you know, for a funeral or a birthday or Mother's Day or Father's Day. There's really exciting and beautiful ways of actually bringing people together that maybe in the past would have just accepted the fact that because of a geographic distance, they wouldn't be able to share or experience moments together. Proximal proximal disadvantages abound. So what that means is, if you're living in a rural community or a smaller city, you didn't necessarily have as much access to really interesting networking events or educational opportunities. And now, regardless of your location, because so much more content and so many more networking events and conferences have moved online, it becomes a much more inclusive landscape for people whose proximity to those types of events would have actually made them miss out in the past. And so now they actually get a seat at the table, which I think just, slightly different accessibility conversation, but, events really have become more accessible to people in those smaller cities and more rural communities. So that is pretty cool. In-person education generally in the past was the primary method for receiving education. Of course, Coursera has been around for a long time. Of course, online learning has been around for a really long time, but by no means was that the norm. And now it is. And so you have so much more access, whether it's fitness classes, cooking classes, there's just so many different ways to touch so many different circles and people and ways of living, simply because of the fact that so much has moved virtual. And then the last point here is that I think in the past, what we saw among a lot of different, whether it was nonprofits or for-profit companies, there was sort of this reliance on doing things the same way year in and year out because it was safer and because there was money on the line with your venue costs and security and insurance, and there were so many limiting factors that contributed to this kind of lack of creativity. And looking at today, where it's really just a whole new landscape and there is sort of this level playing field where everyone is essentially as uncomfortable as everybody else, organizers are taking more risks. So there's kind of no real precedent right now for what an online event should be. So that poses a huge opportunity for organizers to really get creative and take risks, because why not? Moving to section number 2, this is all about virtual event planning 101. So this is the section where we're going to share out some of those expert tips. I'm actually going to invite my colleague Cheryl to share expert tip number 1.
Hi, my name is Cheryl. Rachel, thank you so much. So I'm here to give you tip number 1. First, please make sure that you develop a clear set of goals. Something that you may want to ask yourself is, what do I want to accomplish with this event? And so I'm just going to go through just a few questions, and this by no means is an exhaustive list, but it is something to get you started when you're looking at setting up your goals. So one question you may want to ask is, looking at previous events, can your attendance from last year's event match the attendance of this year's event? Something else you may want to think about your brand. Being able to generate perhaps 100, maybe 200 new online impressions, would that make a difference for you? And something that is so very important for so many people is fundraising. What would it look like if you were able to raise maybe 150,000, 200,000 for your nonprofit using Zoom? So this is tip number 1. And next we will hear from Martin.
Thank you, Cheryl. So you've already figured out, okay, what is it your goals are, and you're pretty clear what type of event you have. The next thing you want to do is really figure out who your stakeholders are. And if you're working for a large company, you might have a lot of internal staff, or if you're a startup, you may have just 1 or 2 folks. If the kind of event you're going to have is a learning event where you're going through either some kind of event where you're transferring knowledge, then you've got people who are either consultants or trainers of some kind, and then you might have some, especially if you've got an event where you're raising money, you may have some sponsors that are sponsoring the event. So you want to make sure that you're targeting the event and targeting the participation to the right stakeholders. And for the next tip, I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone. Our third tip is to define your attendee experience. You want to be thinking about your event before, during, and after the event. what do you want your attendees to be thinking and feeling? So before the event starts, how are you going to communicate that the event's happening, what they can expect, and any technical elements they need to be able to understand in order to access it? During the event, are the attendees going to be active participants where they can turn on their cameras and audios and interact with the speakers and with one another? Or is this more like a webinar like we're doing today where people can interact through the chat, but the speakers have the stage to themselves? Or is it just like a live stream broadcast like you would see on television where people can't really interact except on social media? And after the event, are you going to be circulating a recording of the entire experience, just portions, certain things like that? And how are you going to be distributing those? And if you've got lots of resources, both before or after, are you going to be giving people a central place to find that, like a website? If it's a complicated conference, you've probably got a website just for the event itself. If it's something more simple, part of a series, it's probably it's maybe its own page on a bigger organization's website. Or if it's a very quick event, it may be just a link that you share on Twitter. And that's it for tip number 3. I'm going to pass it over to Kevin for the next one.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone is enjoying some good lunch. Kevin Bass here. So tip number 4, for this one, these are establish your non-negotiables. So this is really looking at what kind of an event are you producing? Are you doing a board meeting? Are you doing a fundraiser? Are you doing something more interactive? So this will help you to determine whether you're going to do like a webinar style or in person, where you want to do maybe breakout rooms and have some more interaction, whether you want to do polls. This is where you really start to see like what kind of features you want to have access to. One of those things, one of the main questions people ask is, what about an MC? Does your event require an MC? I will give you a hint. Yes, it does. An MC really will make or break the event. As you've seen with Rachel here, really just creates the whole vibe of the event, can help to walk through when there's any kind of technical issues, to keep the crowd moving and happy, and really just keep the whole event moving smoothly and moving forward. It's a really great option. Again, breakout rooms, or, are there other things? Do you want concurrent tracks? Is this going to be an event where you're going to have simultaneous meetings happening at the same time? What's the interface going to be? Do you want people to register for this event? Do you want them to register so that you can see who's attending, or is this a paid event where you might use something like Eventbrite or another type of software? So these are some of the things that you'll want to ask. I know it may seem overwhelming, but that's what we're here for, is to help walk you through all of these decisions. So that's it for me. And for the last tip, I'll hand you back over to Rachel.
Cool. Thanks, team. That was so fun to see all of you. All right. So tip number 5 is really not much of a tip. These are a lot of different teachable moments that we've either experienced firsthand or we've heard about through various clients. And so I think this is the real meat of today's presentation. So pay close attention. So per Kevin's last expert tip, avoid creating a leaderless event. Virtual events require extra tender love and care. People are already glued to their screens for other meetings. There's so many reasons why people have every right to feel super checked out during your event. So making sure that you've got that charismatic leader that keeps people engaged will, like Kevin said, really make or break your event. And we've had quite a few people say to us, like, oh, we don't need an MC. And then, 3-4 days out, they're realizing, oh my gosh, yes, we do. I like to call them the spirit guide. You are the backbone of the event. Okay, number 2. Avoid assuming that your in-person format will be the same online. So let's say you've done a fundraiser, maybe you're a nonprofit, you've been doing the same exact fundraising gala, the same exact way for the last 20 years. Every time you raise anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. It's super successful. Everybody in town loves it. Great. I'm really happy for you. But in this moment, you can no longer rent out that ballroom. You are forced to do your fundraiser online, and it would be a mistake to expect that look and feel from your previous in-person event to translate in any sort of identical format online. It just doesn't work that way. You really do have to create a new context for your virtual event. That's not to say it's better or worse. That's just to say it's going to be different and to expect a new look and feel. And really think creatively about like what that means for you and embrace it, because there's no way that you can do the same thing on Zoom that you would do in a massive hotel ballroom with 500 to 1,000 people. And then number 3, avoid fearing for the worst. It's probably easier said than done, but there are a ton of new security features in Zoom that are making Zoom bombing increasingly rare. And not to mention, we have our own strategies that we employ in-house with all of our clients to really minimize any sort of security risks that you might be worried about. And then number 4, avoid expecting a flawless execution. If the start of today's webinar is any indication for you, things don't always go as planned. I started screen sharing, and for whatever reason, my presentation started freaking out and it was sort of like shaky and I had to restart it. I didn't know that was going to happen, neither did you, but we got through it. So really, the goal should be creating an engaging event that leaves people feeling slightly lifted, and hopefully more lifted than they felt before the event. Now moving into action. So this is section number 3. So real quick, there's different reasons why maybe you have not launched your planning stage for your next event. Are you afraid of the virtual unknown? Are you unsure of where to begin? Are you unclear of what your budget should be, especially now that you've shifted what used to be an in-person event into a virtual format and you have no idea what to expect budget-wise or what to plan for? Or are you just fearful that fundraising is dead? We've heard that a lot from our clients, that they're really nervous that the online tools just don't really mimic the in-person fundraising. So what are you going to do about it? That's what we're here for. Okay, so get into action. RippleFX is here to help. And we really, really mean this when we say that we are here to help. We really enjoy this stuff. So we can address your fears about the virtual unknown. Yes, pun intended. It's not as scary as it may seem. We will also help you translate your in-person blueprint into a format that thrives online. That's actually really part of my wheelhouse as a part of this bigger team. We've got a lot of technical folks, and then we've got folks a little bit more on the strategy side, which I really fall more into the strategy side of the equation here. So you'd likely be working with me on helping to translate what used to be your in-person event blueprint into the online format. And then we can also help you understand what the standard costs are associated with virtual event production, because it is a new kind of terrain. It's totally fair that you have no idea what to expect. And quite frankly, what we might be charging for some of our services could be more, could be less than some of our competition. So I'm not here to say that, we have it all completely figured out from a pricing perspective, but I do think that we're probably pretty standard as far as our models go. We would also help you build out a robust run of show. And this is because it's really important to outline a script that matches all of the necessary transitions for a virtual event. And so perhaps you created an event TikTok in the past. So any more experienced event planners on the call today would know exactly what I'm talking about when I say a TikTok. So this is kind of where the TikTok marries the script, which is really important because it's essentially a live broadcast that you're producing now. In-person formats were arguably a little bit more forgiving than the virtual landscape is now, because we don't have each other's close proximity to act as cues anymore. We really do have to be in communication online almost exclusively to nail all of the spotlighting, all of the transitions. It's a dance. We like to call it a choreographed dance. And then we would execute the entire event online. So you would not need to worry about pushing buttons, spotlighting people. So everything that Kevin from our team is doing today to make sure that all of the transitions are easy breezy, we would handle for you. And you can visit our website at www.ripplefx.events to learn more about our services. And the biggest compliment is a referral. So if you know anyone off the top of your head that is actually already in need of virtual event support, we would certainly love to be connected to them. And I think in this next slide, we have both of these things listed. So you can actually connect us to whoever you might know, or feel free yourself to reach out to us at hello@ripplefx.events. That is the email address that you can use. And again, the URL for our website is ripplefx.events.